Ellie, unmute, please.
Hi, welcome to Art Salon. I'm Ellie Shore, and I've been organizing Art Salon since 2012, which is now more than 9 years. Most of that time, as I think most of you know, we've met in person at the Armory Arts Center in West Palm Beach, and now we're meeting virtually on Zoom. Art Salons began because I wanted to create a group where people who lived near me and who were interested in contemporary art could meet. I spoke to people at the Armory Arts Center, and they thought it was a good idea and agreed to host it. So it's over the years, it's just continued to grow. Each art salon features one of the leading contemporary artists in South Florida who talk about their work and about their art practices. After each presentation, there's a chance for all of us to share our ideas, our thoughts, and our experiences, and to meet each other and continue that feeling of community that has been developing over all of these years. We don't use chat in these talks because it's just much more personal when we can see each other and hear each other, and we'll be doing that later on. Before we begin, I'd like to thank a few people who have helped to make these art salons possible. First, the administration and the staff at the Armory Arts Center. And second, Ezra Hubbard, whose very generous donation has allowed us to offer these art salons for free. And third, I wanted to thank my husband, Jerry Kornbluth, who has been working over all of these years behind the scenes, giving me technical support, which I need, and recording each of the art salons and archiving them on my website. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our artists this evening, Jeanne Jaffe and Molly Mcgreevy. I've known Jeanne a lot longer than I've known Molly, and so I'm going to talk about her first. I first met Jeanne at Art Salon. She had recently moved here from Philadelphia and was looking to connect to other people in the art community, and she found me in art salons, which has been wonderful, and has been to many of the art salons since then. She came from Philadelphia, where she had been a professor of art at the University of the Arts, along with developing a significant reputation as an artist using sculpture, printmaking, video, and installation. Some of you will remember that she spoke at an art salon in 2019, and she participated in the 3rd biennial Artists of Art Salon exhibition at the Armory. Her work has evolved from a focus on the creation of identity through language and culture to explorations of history, myths, and fairy tales viewed through a contemporary lens. Jeanne met Molly Mcgreevy at a shadow puppet workshop where they quickly realized they shared a deep interest in puppets and storytelling. Molly has a background in creative writing and has taught at Miami-Dade College, but is now focused on developing an art project revolving around iconography, archetypes, and mythology, such as found in medieval alchemy. Molly has a studio at Collective 62 in Miami, and she invited Jeanne to share it. They have now formed Jaffe-Mcgreevy Projects, and they plan to conduct workshops on shadow puppets and storytelling as a roadmap to personal and cultural change. Jeanne has completed a stop motion video called Alice in Dystopia and is at work at another about Native American history. Molly is at work on a video based on the old German story of Faust, the man who sold his soul to the devil in exchange for material riches and metaphysical knowledge. Jeanne and Molly recently showed their work at their first exhibition at IPC Art Space in Miami, their first exhibition together, and are now part of a larger group exhibition, Awakening, on view at the Coral Springs Museum of Art. And now, please welcome Jeanne Jaffe and Molly Mcgreevy.
Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Ellie. Thanks, Jerry, for all of his technical help, and thank all of you for coming. We really appreciate it. This is going to, so I'm Jeanne Jaffe.
Molly Mcgreevy.
Okay, and we're going to kind of tell the story. This is all going to be about stories, because we're going to tell the story about how we got together and what we're planning to do together and what we have already done. And there's Jerry. Hi, Jerry. So I think we'll go straight to the share screen, and it will be this. Okay, so basically the show we had at IPC Art Space was called Tales of Transformation, and it was about two different stories. Mine was based on Alice in Wonderland, and the rabbit and Alice went down the wrong rabbit hole and ended up in 2020. And it's the story of how they were able to deal with the current crises and find hope and transformation. And then Molly did a second room where she had preparations for her
Preparations for a movie that I'm going to be starting to film later on this year. I made puppets, and right now I'm starting to build the sets for Faust, the old German tale that Ellie was talking about, where a man sells his soul to the devil. So I had everything in the second room, sets, and it was a smaller room, but it was a double show.
So we're going to tell the story of how we met. So this is our studio at Collective 62 in North Miami. And we met through, you want to take it over?
Let me tell you the story because it's a little bit interesting. So Jeanne had gone to China, and she'll talk a little bit about that. And when she came back from China, she decided to give a shadow puppet show at the Jaffe Center, which is a book art center up north at
Boca
Raton. And I saw it online, and I brought my, at the time, 13-year-old daughter. We went up, and Jeanne was teaching the class. And it was a 2-day workshop. It was over 2 days, and I think each day was about 3 or 4 hours. And during that time, not only did we understand that both of us loved puppets and shadow puppets in particular, but we had a lot of things in common, our interests. And so after a couple of days, I had mentioned to Jeanne that I had a studio. It's Collective 62, and that the former roommate I had couldn't afford it, and she had to leave. And Jeanne said, maybe we can try something. Maybe I can come and share the studio with you. And basically that's the beginning of our working relationship, but also our friendship, which I think both of them interact positively with. So,
okay, so we're going to start at the beginning of shadow puppets. So what the way we're laying this out is we're going to start in China, because I spent 5 years, for 3 months for the last 5 years, teaching over there at a university for fine arts there. And when I was there, their shadow puppets are amazing. And during the time of Mao, they were prohibited because they could be political. And a lot of them were sent over to Taiwan. And after Mao lost power, there were people that then brought them back into China. And there was a little museum in Xi'an where I was teaching that had collected a lot of the shadow puppets. And again, the shadow puppets told stories and told a lot about the myths of China and the history of China. I've included a slide about how they're made, because they're made originally from hides, and they're beautifully developed. as you can see in this slide. Behind a white screen, you have a number of people moving these shadow puppets and telling the stories. So I'm going to show you a little snippet of a shadow puppet show I saw in China. Okay, this is a shot of us beginning to work in the studio, Collective 62. I started working on Alice a year or so before I met Molly. And so when I moved into Collective 62, she started helping me move the puppets. And I started directing everything with that, which I'll show you later. We're going to just show you, this is
our recent show at IPC Art Space in Little Haiti. And this is a very small gallery, but a very comfortable, beautiful gallery run by Carol Juice, who is a photojournalist for the Miami Herald. And this gallery is connected physically to the Little Haiti Cultural Center, and they do a lot of events with them as well. So we had a two-person show there, and it was a great space to work in. Carl was great to work with. And this is a view coming from the second gallery where I have some of my works, going into the section where, if you can see carefully, those are the sort of star portraits of the characters from Jeanne's film. And onto the left is a screen where we were showing the Jeanne's. Alice in Dystopia.
So at this point, what we're going to do, we're going to show each person's separate work, and then the work we've started to do together.
And our relationship with narrative,
Yes.
which is what connects us together.
Yes, and our interest in storytelling and language, actually. Both of us have an interest in language as well as literature.
As well as the psychological dimensions of storytelling and language.
So some of the I'm going to give you just a few pieces of my early work to show how I was working with language, but it was pre-verbal language. So people first communicated with the hand and with the body. And so these then were shapes that one would sense and create metaphors from what you saw in the world and what you felt in the body. And so these were read almost like a poem or a text. So you could read the piece vertically or horizontally, but it was meant to be kind of read as a story, but one's own internal story. Same thing here, another example of a text, but a symbolic text rather than a text of language and letters. And this was also a piece called Pre-Verbal Objects, where scale started shifting so that what was a small symbol and a small piece of language then was blown up and became larger than the person themselves and became somewhat overwhelming. One other piece from that series, I'm just going to show a couple more from the Pre-Verbal Objects. And then after this, I really wanted, a lot of these have a sense of animation, like they're going to come alive. And I was trying to figure out how to bring them alive. So I started doing some storytelling with those objects. So I'm going to play this little clip for you. And what it is, it's called Madame Butterfly. So it's a stop motion animation, but it's using some of what we did to Japan, basically, but through these sculptures that I had been making. So for a while, I did some videos like that, and then I started turning to fairy tales. And this is Little Red Riding Hood as a crime scene. And I started trying to look at fairy tales from a contemporary lens and see how to retell what would basically be an old, almost Victorian story, and way older than that, and reinterpret it. How would we tell it today? Because a lot of who we become really is based on the stories we're told and the stories that we incorporate, the histories we incorporate, the stories we're told. So in this one, the legs are about 5 feet tall. So they really turn Little Red Riding Hood into a giant. And the wolf is in the background, and he is the victim. And if you can see in this slide, there are letters in the background from that fairy tale that say, what big teeth you have, what big mouth you have. And it's really the wolf speaking to Little Red Riding Hood. And you can see it a little more clearly here. And this was an installation in the woods where you could walk through the woods and you come up against this crime, basically, this crime scene. And you could walk through it and try to get all the little hints and to try to put the story together for you, which is also something that is really interesting to me, is how people put the story together differently for each person. This is was one on Snow White, where the queen wants to have the daughter killed. And in the woods, all through the woods, was these holes that you see in trees and all with mirrors in them. I made a bunch of them so that you'd walk through the woods and you'd see yourself distorted in these mirrors, so that it was really about kind of envy and vanity that took place in our culture. And it also was kind of reflected in that fairy tale. I also looked at poetry. So this is T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets. And these fragment of his poem says, I said to my soul, be still, wait without hope, for hope would be hope for the wrong thing. Wait without love, for love would be love for the wrong thing. Wait without thought, for you are not ready for thought. So the darkness shall be the light and the stillness, the dancing. And what would happen as you entered this room is these figures would twitch. There were sensors in them. So they'd begin to dance. I have a little clip of this.
I said to my soul, be still, wait without hope. I said to my soul, be still, wait without hope. For hope would be hope for the wrong thing. Wait without love. For love would be love for the wrong thing. There is yet faith. But the faith and the love and the hope are all in the wait. Wait without thought. For you are not ready for thought. So the darkness shall be the light, and the stillness the dancing.
I'm just giving examples of some of the kind of stories and some of the kind of looking at literature, because we were talking about how we were both interested in that, and also in history. So this is one on Tesla, Nikola Tesla. And I really did a installation about him as a mythic figure, somebody that came as an idealist over to America, tried to actually create free energy for the world, and was destroyed, psychologically destroyed and economically destroyed by the American value system and making money. And at the end of his life, he went and stayed in Bryant Park at a hotel near there and took care of the pigeons and just withdrew from the culture. So he was like an amazing figure that wanted to give so much, but in some ways was destroyed frequently by his connection to Edison and electricity. So all of these move as well. So these are animatronics. And what the installation was in the back, it was like his brain. And it was like a video of Niagara Falls, which is where he did his first powerhouse for energy there. And these other figures moved as well. And that's him as a young man. This is him as an old man, and with all of his pigeons flying around. And then this is a little clip so you can see it move.
This planet, with all its appalling immensity, is to electric currents virtually no more than a small metal ball. Up to that time, I knew with a certainty that I would complete my work. But when that pageant died, I knew my life's work was finished.
Those were all quotes from him. So I researched what he had said and researched his life and just tried to present the cycle of life for everybody, really, but him as a mythic figure. And I got a grant for that and worked with the engineering department at Rowan University. So the last few things are going to be the most recent show of Alice in Dystopia. that we had at IPC Space. In this background, you can see Alice and the rabbit, the characters that I made that were used in the film. And in front of that, I wanted to work so that people could come in and really experience what it was like to be in that film, in that space, and also what it was like when Alice lost her size and became very small. So this is Alice and the Phoenix. In her left hand, she has a phoenix, which is the bird that has to die before it can be reborn and transformed. And in the left-hand side is a plant whose roots go down and become a world map at the bottom of the near where her feet are. This is called regeneration, and it's an image from the film, which you'll see in a minute. And again, it's about regrowth. And there is text also in there that says, "I said to my soul, be still." So it again alludes back to T.S. Eliot, and the objects that are growing on there are part human, part plant, just fusions, kind of hybrids. This is the caterpillar from the story and his potentiality that he's holding up in his hand. That's a detail of it. And these are the characters. So this is Lewis Carroll, who's the author, and I wanted him talking to his own characters and that they'd all find themselves in the same dilemma, both the author and the characters. This is the rabbit. This is Alice. And this is the dodo bird. And I'm just going to play the Alice in Dystopia. It's about 6 minutes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Molly. So here we go.
Who are you?
I don't know who I am anymore. I've seen so much destruction, devastation, sorrow, and suffering. I don't know where I am or what to do. Where are we, Lewis Carroll?
I don't know. This is not the story I wrote. The bones of my ancestors. I am trying to restore them. Can you help?
Where am I, and who are you? You must answer that yourself. And so now Molly's going to take over.
Okay. Oh, where do I start after watching Jeannie's long career? But I wanted to talk a little bit about how I have always used narrative when I started dabbling in the visual arts. I think Ellie had mentioned before that I had studied creative writing and always interested in fiction and writers, narratives. So naturally, what I had decided to work on fit in the narrative structure. So this is in which I will explain my Little Red Riding Hood series that is one of the earlier works that I had. Also, I had actually, before I had started the Red Riding Hood series, I had done a piece, it was a triptych, of a story that I remember from childhood. And this is all collage paper pasted onto wooden boards. But this was a story of when I was younger. And my younger brother used to go into the plum trees. And there was a neighbor who used to try to knock him down. The piece is called Trespassing. And the woman on the left is representative of my mother, and the one on the right was my aunt, whose house that it happened at. There's just a close up there. I guess I wanted to show here, these were actual buildings in the steel town that I grew up in, including a basilica. Here I have a family tree, which is a piece that I had made that not only was collage and paper, but it included fabric and applique. And this was based on actually a Tudor family tree that I had come across when I was looking at old family trees. You can see by the way the hands are holding, that was like the original template for it. But what I did for this was did a modern version, and each of these characters is a member of the family, of course, but also each one has a different addiction. So there is a narrative within each person and throughout the whole. So for instance, we have on the left a guy that was addicted to sweets and food. The next one is a woman who loves her cats. The one on the right is addicted to alcohol. And of course, the grandfather on the very right was a card player. As well as doing actual narratives, I also did portraits of my favorite authors. This one is E.T.A. Hoffmann, a German romantic writer, and one of my favorites, a good Gothic writer that did the original Sandman, actually did the original Nutcracker, and a couple of other famous tales, not popular here in the States, but my friends that grew up in Europe, they all studied him. A very, very interesting and fantastic writer. And this is Shirley Jackson. I'm sure some Americans have heard of her. A great Southern Gothic writer that I absolutely adore. And so this piece has in the background some calligraphy from one of her famous books called The Haunting of Hill House. And it's a psychological ghost story that was way ahead of its time. You can see in the lower left-hand corner a glass with stars referring to a beautiful scene in the novel where a young character about to go to the haunted house is sort of enchanted by the romantic idea of things. And so she has used stars or sort of like a poetic metaphor there. Also include cigarettes. She was known to smoke 2 packs a day and also eat like 4 sticks of butter a day. It was crazy. Anyhow, back to the piece that I had originally giving the picture of is the Little Red Riding Hood series. My idea for Little Red Riding Hood was I have a daughter that is very interested in music and taught herself the ukulele. And after, knowing this story for some time and looking at my daughter, I realized that there are similarities in the Little Red Riding Hood with the music industry, in the sense that the music industry actually has been compared to a wolf that devours its young female musical talent. So I played with that a little bit. And in the major picture, I wanted to show you my daughter there and how I had redrawn her from the picture. That's her holding on to her ukulele. And the jacket that she's wearing is, I had a friend who's a fantastic calligrapher, and she did the original story onto paper for me. And I used that as the Little Red Riding Hood. And here is the largest piece in the series. And this is, of course, the wolf overlooking Little Red Riding Hood. But one of the things that I wanted to show you was when I had decided to make this piece, I ended up using a lot of album covers, like LP covers. So I used them as pieces. And if you look in the first one, you can see a band there. It happened to be one of my favorite bands when I was growing up. It's ZZ Top. I don't know if you guys could see it. I love the band. I loved a lot of rock and roll bands at the time. My father and consequently my brother are rock musicians. But one of the things that I didn't realize or really think about at some length was until I had grown up, was how misogynist those lyrics were. Even though I loved ZZ Top and I still love their music, if you listen to their lyrics, they're incredibly misogynist. And I don't want to go back and be like, oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. Of course, that's not true, but it's just something that I had been thinking over once I was seeing my daughter interested in music. And part of the series was I had created these doll clothes that you would normally see in a book that would be like a cutout doll. So you would cut out the pieces and put it onto the center there. But if you can see there, what I did is offer a variety of different outfits, from the traditional conservative to, if you look on the lower left, more of the sexed up outfits that a lot of the female pop artists were and still are forced to wear as young women as they're growing. And on the right was a jacket that I had made. And in switching it over from the red on the outside, I put the wolf coat on the outside so that you could see that she can transform herself into any side that she wanted to. Didn't have to be either or. Again, another picture of my daughter with her infamous ukulele, and the centerpiece of the I guess installation, where she has confidence, is going to move forward, and it's an open-ended ending for this piece. It's a narrative, but it's still open-ended. You can go with it or you can let it overcome you. But in this one, I let my daughter overcome it. And this is again the final. That was all put together. Another interest I have in narrative form is the idea of icons, which, even though they're very still images, have a history of narrative behind them. And so what I did is my interest in the Florida Everglades and the different animals that represent the Everglades in a way that they're patron saints. in that you would have saints and there's still images, for instance, in churches or statues. So the first one I made is called Green Heron. And if you look carefully in the second and even third picture, you can see that the background is made from like survey maps. My husband is a lawyer in real estate, so he's able to give those to me wholesale. And really, it's about how development is encroaching on this particular area and upon these animals. In the middle picture, I actually have a sugar cube there that it really accentuates the fact that the bird is a martyr of the sugar industry in Florida and how that saps up the water from the Everglades. And just more of these. This is a Florida panther, and using some of the same elements of the background of the survey maps, and the sign that he's holding are signs to protect them from development, and they used to get killed from the cars going on the alligator alley. Here's also the alligator, and this was the last piece that I had made. And this one was based on a saint. I think I have one of the pictures next to it, following it. Basically, icon of the Everglades, and we have the rising water. You can see the waves in the background, and he's holding in his hand his right hand side, there is a thermometer, Galileo thermometer, which suggests the high temperature. And then in his left hand, he has a Noah's Ark, which harks back to those icons, religious icons of water levels and the danger of it. This is an example of one of the many Saint Christopher that I looked at that I thought was fascinating because of his, how should I say, he was a knight, a warrior, and I wanted to translate that into the alligator. The most recent series that I had made was quite a move from the original collages that I had made. And what I did for these was based on the idea that I was going to talk about in a minute, was the Faust movie that I am making. And I became very interested in alchemy, and in particular medieval alchemy and the manuscripts from the Middle Ages. So I took photographs of very quiet, contemplative spaces, and these photographs would suggest one of the alchemical motifs or symbols, or even if it wasn't directly from alchemy, for me represented alchemy. So this one here is called Anima Animus, and it's the part of the Jungian idea of your negative and positive traits coming together. So that's that one. And this one is called Fortuna's Wheel, Wheel of Fortune, where your wheel, you can go up, you can go down. It's based on basically luck and fortune and the, ever going wheel of life. So just a note here on how I made these was a lot of times you can see in the first picture, some of these were taken directly from medieval manuscripts. And this one here was based on a manuscript of a man who really made up different kinds of animals, combining different animals, combining half humans, half animals. And this one was based on what he thought is a pterodactyl. I don't know if it was based on maybe some bones that they found or whatever, but to me, it reminded me of the um, Phoenix. So what I did is for some of these, I would trace them on clear acrylic paper, put them over a light box, as you can see in the middle picture, and then put my photograph over it, and then draw or trace the image with fountain pen and ink, like a nib and ink. And you could see for the third one there, that's the final piece. It's called Alchemical Phoenix. Okay, here's another one called Earth Mother. This one is called Anima Vita, and it is actually based on an imprint of a very early printer, but I added to it a little bit. This is a small series of colored gels that you would use for photography. It's called Conjuncto 1 and Conjuncto 2. And finally, what I had shown at the IPC Art Space with the Tales of Transformation with Jeanne is preparations for my upcoming film, Faust. And here is the storyboard, very beginning, showing alchemy, showing Faust, showing the role of consumerism in my movie, which is the Faustian Bargain, the contemporary Faustian Bargain. And some of the puppets that Jeanne has taught me to make with molds and resin. An example of the clothing patterns and one of the pieces of clothing that I made. This is Faust here. A close-up. Gretchen, who is traditionally in most of the stories, his lover, his first lover. And this is a boy that actually doesn't appear in most of the Faust stories, but I'm going to use him. I have some great ideas for him, so I'll put him in there. And now we're going to talk about our workshops that we gave at the Tales of Transformation.
And basically, this is where we're starting to come together. We're starting to give workshops to kids, adults, about them telling their own stories now and making the shadow puppets that they can then, put on a performance. So these are some of the kids that we were working with at the IPC space, and they're making their shadow puppets. And we're helping them learn how to even use the, cut well and easily. And
they were a lively bunch.
Yes, they were.
We loved them, and they were so into it.
They loved it. They had such a good time. Here's them showing some of their shadow puppets. We'll do a little tiny bit of like their presentations.
Oh my God, that looks so cool, you guys.
Oh my gosh. I'm late, always late. Come here, my friend. Let me pet you.
And then there's one, they did a beautiful little boat and the whole thing on pirates. It was great. So we don't have very much. I am going to show one of the Chinese students did a beautiful little piece on using shadow puppets and marionettes, and we're going to end with this. So we're going to end there, and it gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're hoping to do. We're hoping eventually to do shadow puppets and marionettes and work with people to tell
Stop
their
motion.
own stop motion, work with people to tell their own stories. But we just got together 2 years ago. I mean, not even. And so we've been working
It's a new
on
venture.
It's a new venture.
Mhm.
But, you know, you can let us know if you have anybody that's kind of, especially children or even adults. We want to work with both. And really, it's mostly about people being able to tell their stories and stories that are really important to them. You know, so anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's fascinating to me that, yeah, although your backgrounds are so different, this coming together is so rich. And watching this, I became aware for the first time that you both had been working on Little Red Riding Hood stories.
Right.
Before we knew each other.
Before you
Right.
knew each other. And I think
Yes.
that's so cool.
Before we knew each other.
So I'd like you to talk a little bit about the show that you're both in now in Coral Springs. I want to encourage everyone to go to that. The opening is going to be November 18th,
18th.
Thursday
18th?
night.
Yeah.
It's open, but the reception is
It's
gonna be-
really, it's called Reawaken, and it's members of the Collective 62. So it's Marina Font, Nina Sorrell, Marcella Marcuzzi, Molly, and myself.
And the theme is, for the most part, a narrative.
It's
So each person approaches narrative in a different.
Yeah.
The centerpiece is Jeannie's work.
And
So,
it was because I was originally invited in to have a solo there, and it's a big space, and I didn't really want to have to do it, and it's more fun to do it with other people. So I asked the curator if I could invite. At the time, the collective was smaller,
mhm.
so it's members of the collective and how they're doing ideas around different, like Marina's doing like memories of her childhood.
Based on a
Yeah,
scrapbook,
a scrapbook.
which is the text. And then Marcella has
Oh,
the
the
Dante,
Dante, yeah.
and it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful piece.
It's
You have to
beautiful.
see it.
So it's all different
Yeah.
ways of story. And then Nina did a kind of a ritual and some, so
Mhm.
it's about, stories don't have to be linear. They
Mhm.
can be, you know, different kinds of things. So that's what the show's all about. And it's about reawakening. It's about some of these issues we've been talking about how to, you know, transform.
That's November 18th.
November 18th. I can't remember the hours. I
That's
think
the reception, but as I said, the
It's
show
the
is
opening
open.
reception.
It's the
Yeah.
opening reception. It's already open, but the reception's on the 18th.
That's cool.
That's the day to be
I've
there.
been thinking about that Jeanne spoke at Art Salon 2 years ago and how much has changed in just
then,
2
right?
years. And as the person who organizes Art Salon, I am, there's a question that comes up for me over and over and over again, because, you know, it's like, where do you want to go on vacation? Who do you want to have speak at Art Salon? And people who have spoken several years ago in so many situations have moved ahead, and their work has evolved in such interesting ways. And so the Art Salon becomes this frozen in time snapshot. And it is frozen in time because Jerry records them and puts them on the website. So you can go back. It's like going to YouTube. You can go back and you can see where someone was in 2014 and what
Yeah.
their work is. But the work is, because people are so creative. These are such creative people, and the work just progresses. And so I'm wishing that we could come back in another couple of years, and particularly with Molly, and see what Faust turns into. Molly, having seen your installation at IPC, and you showed a little bit of it tonight, the puppets have such personal aliveness to them. Their faces are so compelling. You've captured portraits of people that we don't know.
Right.
That
And
little
they'll come
boy
to
is
life
just,
and see how
you know,
they
and
act.
Gretchen and
Yeah.
and Faust himself, each one of them is such a distinct personality that you've captured in this miniature face.
Right.
And it's going to be
And
wonderful
how
to watch
they-
them.
Their personalities come out will affect how they move and even how they act, or what will dictate the action. So everything is interconnected. You know, what I feel that someone with a face like that would act would be different than if his face had turned out differently or more sharper, or, you know, so everything is connected, and it'll be interesting for me as well to see how things are going to turn out at the end.
Absolutely.
I think we probably should end it for tonight.
Yes.
This has been so wonderful. It's been a small group tonight. It's been very personal. I'm very happy for all of you who stayed around for 2 hours. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks for your
Um,
questions too.
Yeah,
The
thank you
questions were
very
great.
much. Yeah.
Wonderful questions. I'm not going to even say much about our next speaker, except that it is on December 7th, and Candy Lopez will be speaking. I've been wanting her to speak for a long time. She has been teaching on Tuesday nights, and for years now, she's been saying she just can't. And she just changed her schedule around, so she'll be here. And so come back, and I've got a wonderful array of artists speaking through next May. And somewhere in there, I'll see a lot of you down in Miami during Miami Art Week. We've got all kinds of things going on. Thank you
Thank you,
for coming.
Ellie.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you for everybody for
Thank
coming.
you,
everybody.
Thank you, Janie.
And for
Thank you,
moderating.
Molly and Jeanne. It's been wonderful.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
night.
Bye. Bye.